Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Reference Point. I'm your host, Dave Cokerhook, and you've just experienced the California Youth Symphony. This is fantastic. I'm really going to have a great time in this conversation today because I have with me Leo Eyler, who is the music director of CYS. Leo, thanks for joining me here on Reference Point.
Thank you, Dave. Great to be here.
So what we just were listening to for only a few seconds was a piece. What piece was that?
That was a section from Salome's Dance of the Seven Veils from Richard Strauss's opera Salome.
Ah, very cool. So I think what's cool about all of this is that these are young people playing. A lot of us have gone to opera or to San Francisco Symphony or wherever you happen to live, and there's the orchestra and it's all these adults and blah, 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 blah. These are young people that are playing at a caliber that is at that comparable level, which is really cool.
Pretty much that's what's happening, definitely. Very, very high caliber of playing.
So how long has the organization been around?
The organization was founded in 1952, so this year we actually celebrated our 70th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of the longest running youth orchestras in the country.
Very cool. And how many members does the orchestra have as far as performing members?
Well, the entire organization of CYS consists of a number of different ensembles and orchestras, which together are around 450.
Oh, wow.
The orchestra that you just saw, which is the senior orchestra, is about around 100 students, generally speaking.
Okay. And you use the word students, so these are all individuals who are in, high school, or middle school, high school, whatever, and are learning music?
Yeah.
Is that how that works?
Well, they're all in school. They're all, most of them, at least in the upper groups, are in high school. And they almost all of them certainly take private music lessons on their instruments. And we try to give them the ensemble training that will really propel them forward.
So when a young person, I'm going to stay away from that term, when a young person comes initially, and you mentioned there are different ensembles and different levels of proficiency, I'm guessing. When they initially come to the organization, are they do they read music? Are they really reasonably competent at whatever instrument they're playing? Are they introduced to possible instruments that they might play when they come to you initially? How does that all work?
They are competent, definitely. They can play, so they're not absolute beginners on the instruments. And of course, there's many different levels, depending on their age, whether it's 9 years old, 17 years old, etc. And regarding your second point there are times when we will suggest certain things depending on the needs of the orchestra. As an example, let's say we're a little low on string basses. We may try to urge some students to take up the string bass.
Yeah.
If there are 190 violins trying out and 2 basses, that's a
little bit of a balance. I kind of get that sense. I sing in a men's barbershop chorus, and if you don't have the right balance in terms of the voice parts, and in this case the instrumental parts, you don't get the same impact from the music.
Absolutely.
So the organization started in 1952. Why? What's the purpose? Why have a youth symphony?
Well, we believe it is to provide young musicians with the finest musical experience that they can have through training and performance. Performance is very important at the very highest level. So our focus is education and also the performance aspect of the music. So we aim very high, and we like to think that we achieve that.
And do the students who are performing with your organization, do they also have something that they're doing in their schools? Because a lot of high schools will have orchestral activities or jazz band or something like that. And do they participate on both sides of that equation?
Yes, I would say that the vast majority of them participate in their school music programs as well as our independent youth orchestra. And of course, I always urge them to be part of their school program. I myself am a product of the public schools in Los Angeles, and we had great programs when I was growing up.
Right.
That was slightly before Proposition 13, but so yes, they do, and our relationships with school music directors are very good, and I love to go coach in schools and offer any assistance that I can as well.
I was going to ask you about that because it seems like there is the potential for a lot of synergy, because the music community, and as I said, I sing, right? So the music community can be very supportive of each other, and I would think that that's a very real potential and probability when it comes to the middle school, high school programs, and how the CYS can participate isn't the right word, but support what they do. Now, do you do that with like guest lecturing and maybe introduction to certain pieces of music? How would that work?
I don't think it's so much guest lecturing. What I've done mainly is to go to rehearsals of large ensembles at schools and to listen and then to sort of give my assessment and then conduct them a little bit and rehearse through the works that they're doing. I think it's just good to have sometimes a different set of ears, and the same thing for myself. I mean, I always like to have a different set of ears too, to help them along and to help the directors.
Yeah.
And of course, there are many different varieties of music programs in schools, and for instance, our orchestra draws from a vast number of schools. I can't even remember the number, something like 50 or 75 schools.
Wow.
All the way from Gilroy up to Marin County and farther. So that's a lot of programs out there. And we really like to have good relations, because you're right, it is and can be and should be a synergy. And we want that. What we don't want is both of us all competing for the same people.
Right.
So it really winds up on the student themselves.
Right. So how often do the various ensembles do a public performance?
Well, we do in the senior orchestra that was featured here. We play concerts, 4 to 6 concerts a year. And so, for instance, usually it's in November, December, March, May, and if we were going on tour, that would be one in June. We play the most. Then as the orchestras, as you're thinking more about the slightly lower, not lower level, but the more
The junior ensembles,
yeah. For lack of a better word, yeah.
Well, you call the other one the senior.
Yeah, well, there's an associate
senior.
orchestra,
Okay.
for instance, that I conduct as well. Those are a little less often, but generally speaking, I would say, we're out there probably 10, 12 times in our season, which runs from September to June.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
plenty of opportunities.
And where do you rehearse?
We rehearse in Los Altos at Almond Elementary School.
Okay. And then where do you perform?
Well, that's a good question. We perform at San Mateo Performing Arts Center, which is part of San Mateo High School, or associated with it. We also perform at Kenyatta College. For many years, and I really mean a lot of years, we used to play at the Flint Center, but that is no longer possible.
Right, yeah.
And to be honest, it's a difficult question to answer, especially for my two largest groups, which are the senior orchestra and the associate orchestra, both of whom have close to 100 students, because there are not a lot of stages in the South Bay
accommodate that size.
can accommodate that size. As a matter of fact, there are very few stages anywhere in Northern California that can accommodate that size.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So let's take the senior orchestra, and they do something, I think you said 4 or so, 4 maybe 6 times a season. Are you performing the same set each?
No, different.
Okay. How long does it take to nail whatever your performance set's going to be for a given performance?
Well, it takes, generally speaking, a little over 2 months.
Oh, okay, that's not bad.
Or we'll say eight or nine rehearsals, something like that. Because that's
pretty
all
good.
the time we have.
Well, that was interesting to me because I used to do Gilbert and Sullivan, okay, up in
yeah.
San Francisco, perform with the Lamplighters, and we would do 4 shows a year, and you'd you'd work like crazy to get one going, and then opening night, and then you had 2 weeks off, and then you start rehearsal on the next show, and it was about an 8 or 12 week cycle, and so so that makes some sense.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more, Leo, about your role as music director. What exactly does that mean?
Well, I'm the music director and, of course, also conductor. So as music director, it's my responsibility to oversee the organization as a whole. So we have 7 different groups in the California Youth Symphony. We have 2 full orchestras. We have a wind symphony. And then we also have string ensembles and wind ensembles at the younger age, generally speaking, level. So this is that 450-ish number that I gave you.
Right.
But I'm sort of in charge of guiding the progress and the trajectory of all of them, and working with other directors who direct those groups. I only do 2 of those 7, to make sure that we're all on the same playing field as to what our goals and.
Do you decide on what music's to be played by each group?
No. They do their own music. I mean, we certainly talk about it, but they are
those
independent.
Those directors decide what it is that their students are going to be playing.
Yeah,
pretty much.
absolutely.
Got it.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick moment here to let the folks who are watching us know that they can send any queries that they might have about what we're discussing today in the California Youth Symphony. Send it to info@referencepointtv.com, and I'll get it out to Leo and we'll get your answer. Or go up to their website. Just go to their website, cya.org. CYS. Thank you. Youth Symphony, CYS.org. And that'll, there's a lot of really interesting information up there. I was very enlightened by the scope of what your organization does. I mean, this is not, this is not a small entity. How many staff do you guys have?
Well, we have 5 musical staff, and in terms of the administration, I believe we have 4 full-time staff, or 4 administrative staff.
Got it. Okay.
But that's still an awful lot to do, because that's a lot of kids.
It's a lot of young people, a lot of musicians.
Yes.
Yeah, and and it seems to, if you're going to perform at a venue, you have to pay for the venue, and there's all sorts of stuff. So how does all of this get funded? Because it's the group I sing with is a nonprofit organization. We got to do things. We sell tickets to shows. We do other things to try to. But what is the kind of expectation or need with respect to that? And then, as an aside to that, how can people help?
Well, we have dues for the students that they pay, and we also have we have scholarship opportunities, of course, and financial aid as well. Donations, as you mentioned there, and then also corporate donations and corporate sponsors, some of them. So as a nonprofit ourselves, we probably are looking at the same types of things that your musical group and a lot of them are looking at, which is donations.
But when you do a show, do people pay to come to the performance?
Well, that's another interesting question, because we've at the moment we are giving our concerts absolutely for free to the public.
Really?
Yeah, which
wow.
hasn't always been that way, but especially coming out of the pandemic and all of this, that was a gesture that we wanted to make, and we've been very happy with it so far. So yeah.
You just mentioned the pandemic, which is an interesting thing. What impact did that have on the ability of the students to engage, and did you lose performers, musicians as a result of that?
I'm really happy to say, and very proud as well, that we managed through the pandemic in a superb manner. And you know, there were numerous youth orchestras, not even just from around here, but throughout the country, that simply had to stop and didn't play for a whole year, or at least a year. We made a commitment to really make it work through online presence. And that was not easy, of course, because we had zero time to prepare for that. And doing music via online things like Zoom and whatnot is probably the most difficult field of any to try to do that, because you can't sync the music very easily if you're trying to listen to 100 musicians. It has to basically be one by one.
At a time, right.
Yeah. So it was immensely time consuming, of course, but we actually produced a number of full-length concerts throughout the year that can even be viewed now online, with wonderful videography, wonderful sound editing. It all has to be edited.
Yes,
That we worked on, and believe it or not, very, very few kids quit. I mean, we had a full complement that whole year, and I'm talking about basically all of our groups.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, that speaks well to the leadership, to be able to instill that kind of energy and enthusiasm and desire to continue.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you. The students were thankful for it too.
yeah,
They really were.
I'll bet. I mean, the chorus I sing with, we struggled through the pandemic time, and we tried, like you said, you use Zoom, and you know, you get 40 voices trying to sing together. It's just like you can't do it on Zoom. We found another tool called Jamulus that we were able to do, but then you had, depending upon whose computer was, where the latency here was different than there, so it was never perfect.
Right.
But we managed to sustain, and we actually did a couple things too, where we had guys record their part, and then we compiled the video, and it worked out really well. So,
well,
I
I can tell you that sometimes when we were working on all this, we would say to ourselves on the artistic staff, we'd say, look, it could have been worse. We could have been a chorus.
yeah.
Because we all know about
yeah. You know, before the show, you were telling me a little bit about this other activity that you guys do for the youth, and that is like a preparation camp or something like that. What? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, we do for the senior orchestra every year. At the very beginning of August, we have a 1 week long overnight, of course, camp out near La Honda, near Pescadero, up in the redwoods and the mountains there, or hills. And it is a very intensive week to introduce them to the music and to introduce them to themselves so that they can begin to get to know each other and bond a little bit. And we try to go through as much of the music that we'll be playing for this entire coming year, 2022-23, for instance, and at least get them involved with it so they don't come to the beginning rehearsals having no idea what's going on.
And how many pieces are there usually in that season?
Usually around 12, I would say, 12 or 13.
And so at any given performance, you're doing how many?
3 to 4.
3 to 4? Okay.
Yeah.
I want to hear a little bit more of what these guys did. And this one was at Davies Hall, is that right?
Is this the Tchaikovsky?
Yeah, the one.
Yes, that was Davies Hall.
That was Davies Hall.
Exactly
So
right.
if that'll play now, it would be great to hear a little bit more of what the group did. That's very cool. Very large string section there.
Yes.
Is that normal in an orchestra?
No. Maybe not quite that size. It's a little steroidal. But again, most of these students, sorry, I've just come from camp. So,
Yeah.
they do play. Most of them are string players.
Oh.
Because that is these string instruments are the ones that you can start when you're 3 or 4. You can't do that with a wind instrument. It just doesn't really work.
Right.
You don't have the kind of apparatus yet to do that. So that's one of the reasons why we see at auditions, for instance, which I hear every year, a lot, a lot of string instruments. But it is a little big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very cool. So how do you pick music?
Well, I like to consult, of course, with some colleagues of mine, and also with my wife, Carmina, who is the operations director. And we talk about, we get together and we think about what we haven't played in X number of years. We have a big list of everything we've played since I became music director in 1990. And also trying to balance things out with the soloists that we have, because soloists are also a very large part of it. There's a big competition that we hold every year, and then we have winners, and then those pieces I have to integrate into the programs as well.
Cool. And is it all classical music?
Basically, yeah, although we're branching out a little bit this year. We're going to be playing some Duke Ellington.
Oh,
so,
very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
He did write orchestral music.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
So this genre, I mean, I happen to be a great fan. I throw on some Mozart or Beethoven or Brahms regularly at the house just because it's so soothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Tchaikovsky too, but that's neither here nor there. So how do the students respond to this? Because in the high schools, it's just like, this is not what people are listening to.
Right.
So what's the kind of response and impact to the student?
Well, I think the response is usually very, very good. I mean, recall that these students are studying privately, almost all of them, with private violin teachers, clarinet, trumpet, horn. And so they're already exposed to classical music in their private lessons. But I think it's always at the forefront of my mind when we're choosing music, will the students enjoy it? Will they get something out of it? And I think we've had very good luck. The only time it's a little bit iffy, but they come around, is when we program contemporary classical music, which can be for them very dissonant. And,
Copland?
Oh no, way past Copland. I mean, living composers from right now.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think that's very important for them to know as well. So we do that. We just had this camp that happened just a few days ago. We were playing some contemporary music, and it was a little stretch there for them. But they, after they've been working on it for 2 months and they finally sort of get it, then I think it really comes. They come around and they're happy to play it.
I can relate to that. My chorus sings barbershop, and we got a few guys when we do some more non-barbershop standard type music, they go, oh. They freak out a little bit, and then eventually say, boy, this was a lot of fun. Your students, when they graduate high school, have to move on. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So do they come back for anything? Do you see them? What happens to them afterwards? Are they performing in their colleges? Are they?
Well, what happens, they go into all different types of fields. One of the most amazing things about CYS, and well, this is true for many youth orchestras as well, though, is that the majority of these students, and they're all fine musicians, very, very advanced, choose not to go into music. So they're not going to be music majors.
Ah, interesting.
But a lot of them keep up with the music, whether they're going to Stanford or they're going to MIT or UC Berkeley, and they try to keep their music going with them. They go into all different types of fields. I keep in touch with some. I mean, there's a lot of kids in
Sure.
32 years.
You would think, yeah.
But sometimes we use our graduating alums as counselors at our camp, for instance, in the summer. And then sometimes if we need extras, if they're around, I have no problem giving them a call as well.
So do you have, we've got about a minute and a half left in the show, and I'm just curious, do you have anybody, would you think about in the 32 years that's been a student of yours who's gone on to continue, you're just like, that's one of my students?
Oh, I have all kinds of them, yes. One of them is the principal harpist of the Iceland Symphony.
Oh, wow.
A cold job, but
Yeah.
and there are certainly many who have gone on.
Yeah. So what do you see for the group in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I'd like to see an expansion, but not in terms of numbers. We don't want 10 orchestras with 600, 700 people, but an expansion of the services that we can provide for the students to make them have an even more enhanced time. For instance, coaching, sectionals,
Cool.
more concerts, finding new venues to play in, run-out concerts, etc.
Okay, this sounds like something we should talk about a little bit more, but we're out of time. So I'm going to have to end off here, and if you'll stick around for a little bit, we'll do another segment if that's okay with you.
Of course.
And I'd love to get into that a little bit more. But ladies and gentlemen, we're done for now. Appreciate your being there. Don't forget to send in your queries here at info@referencepointtv.com, and we'll see you next time. And let's play a little bit more of that orchestra as we go to ending credits.